What's up, everyone? Matt Gajewski here, back again talking college football. And today we are breaking down the Nebraska Cornhuskers. Before we get started, if you like this content, make sure to subscribe to the channel, like the video. All that helps a ton for a small channel like this as we try to grow. And if you have any feedback, whether that's a comment, a suggestion, anything, it's greatly appreciated. Helps the video, helps us get better, even if it's a disagreement with something about Nebraska or another team. So thank you if you've done any of that. Let's dive into the Cornhuskers this year. We have their efficiency metrics from last season up. This was a bowl team. They finished 7-6. It was year 2 under Matt Rule. Now we're going into year 3. We did see improvement in a lot of major efficiency metrics, but still probably not quite the ceiling that Nebraska fans want to achieve. They were hovering around the top 50 in most areas. The offense definitely showed improvement as they made a change at OC at the end of the season. Offensive line was a top 50 unit, but rushing and receiving efficiency, both just outside the top 50. That's not super surprising. Pass game was limited, but again, showed a lot of growth throughout the year, especially as they moved to Holgorsen. On defense, main area of concern was their secondary, where they finished 84th. They did have a good pass rush. A lot of that unit is gone, and their overall defense finished around average. It was a pretty good unit considering the talent they had, good enough to lose their DC. So now we move forward into year 3 under Matt Rule, which historically has been the year we start to see him put everything together, whether it was with Temple, whether it was with Baylor. And here's what we should expect under him and his new staff, because there is a couple changes. So far, Matt Rule is 12-13, but it's an upward trajectory. They went 5-7 in year 1, 7-6 last year. And I guess positively for Nebraska fans, they played a ton of close games again. This has been going all the way back to the Scott Frost days, something that Nebraska has done. But instead of losing them all, they actually won some of their close games. And they were in position to win a lot more, especially at the end of the year. They lost by single digits to Illinois, Ohio State, UCLA, USC, and Iowa. A lot of really close games. And some of the changes they made, I think, will benefit them not only this year, but we saw it a little bit at the end of last year. Only game that they really got blown out against was Indiana, which was a weird one, 56-7. Overall, their best wins, Colorado, Rutgers, and Wisconsin. So it's definitely still some growth. But speaking to those staff changes, Dana Holgorsen is going to be the full-time OC. He stepped in for Satterfield kind of in the middle of last year, coordinated the last 3 games, which there was offensive improvement in that span. And Holgorsen has a ton of coaching experience, including coordinating some high-powered offenses. So we'll see what he can do this year. I'm optimistic the offense will be better with him. I think they'll be a little run heavier. They were pretty heavy on the pass, and their seconds per play was slow. So we'll see what Holgorsen does. Not expecting drastic changes. Defense, they lose Tony White to Florida State. He's been awesome with Nebraska. So they promote internally. They bring up John Butler, who coached DBs last year. He spent time in the NFL. He was there with the Bills from 2022 to 23. Again, with DBs at Nebraska last year. So hoping that there is some continuity between the two coordinators, Tony White moving to Butler. Let's look at talent acquisition for Nebraska. Recruiting has been very good for this team. It's a top 5 recruiting team, top 25, recruiting team the last 3 years with good retention. I mean, going all the way back to 23, they've retained over 50% of that class. Last year's class, which was 18th, is very much intact. They're right around the top 5 in recruiting in the Big Ten, really only trailing the big boys. That is Ohio State, Oregon, Penn State's most years. USC has made a recruiting push. So that's kind of the team they're trailing right now. But they're right on the cusp. And Nebraska is not always the easiest place to recruit to. So got to give a lot of credit to Matt Rule for getting players in the door and then developing them once they're there. And if you want to look at the transfer portal, they can use it as much as they want. They're currently 13th in this class. Last year, they were 50th, but in 23, they were 28th. So you can see Nebraska has the resources to either recruit high schoolers or the transfer portal, paper over whatever they may be missing in that area. Let's dive into the roster and look at the 2 deep for Nebraska this year and who we expect to contribute. This is a little tool we made, and basically what it does is try to project who will actually play in the 2 deep this year, what year they are in school, their snaps the last 2 years. recruiting ranking in terms of star, then you get a value score. This looks first and foremost at your recruitment. And then the more snaps you play, the less it looks at recruiting and the more it looks at your on-field play. So Raiola, it's a bit of a puzzle with him. 5-star recruit, plays immediately as a freshman. And the stats don't look great on paper. But the thing I want to highlight with Raiola is a ton of growth year one, just throughout the season. You look at week one all the way to the end of the season, showed a lot of growth and a lot of potential. He's not mobile. That's the biggest thing with him. However, he faced a decent amount of pressure last year, 140 of them. Only 18% of those turned into sacks, which is pretty good for a guy who's not known for his mobility. And he had a good time to throw, 2.72 seconds per each throw. Better than a lot of young kids, especially when you isolate for freshmen. So overall, the 5-star completed 67% of his passes, 2,819 yards, that's 6.9 yards per attempt, 13 touchdowns, 11 interceptions, 17 big time throws, and 12 turnover-worthy plays. Yeah, 12 turnover-worthy plays, 11 interceptions. Generally, those are getting converted at about a 50% rate. So you could say there was some bad luck with Raiola in that area. As far as moving forward, very optimistic with Holgorsen under center. Raiola, criticism aside, people have criticized his weight. He's allegedly been working as hard as he's ever been in the weight room with the training table to get into the best shape of his life. So maybe we can see more scrambles out of him in the future. Regardless, he's a 5-star quarterback at Nebraska. It doesn't get any better than this at this position. Behind him, they go out and add Purdue transfer, now redshirt freshman 4-star Marcos Davila. He did not play a lot last year, so complete unknown, but it's good to have a 4-star talent as your backup. They also recruited a 4-star freshman in TJ Lateef. Jalen Gramstad's still on the roster at QB. It's not a lot of production, but there's definitely talent behind Raiola. And basically every one of these players is young, but development with the system will benefit them. It's good to have the depth that Nebraska does. Running back, they lose Dante Dowdell. He was the leading rusher on the team, but they do return their most efficient rusher, Emmett Johnson. He's 5'11", 200 pounds. He emerged late in the year as the lead back for this team. He finished with 117 carries, which he turned into 598 yards. That's 5.1 yards per carry. 39 catches on 41 targets with no drops. Also an explosive back. He has 17 runs at 15-plus yards. Fantastic place to start. I think it'll be somewhat of a committee, but he should be the lead back in this offense. Not the biggest, which is why I think you maybe see a bigger back in short yardage and stuff like that. But when they started to lean on him, the offense became more efficient. From there, I think it's a lot of youth. Sophomore Quinton Ives played 16 snaps, but he's 6'3", 210. They have 4-star freshman Jamarian Parker, who came in at 175. You definitely aren't going to play at 175. But allegedly, he's put on 15 pounds of muscle. So now we're at least seeing him listed at 190. He's one of the faster spark freaks on this team. So even as a change of pace, it would be good to see Parker. They also have redshirt freshman Mekhi Nelson. Incoming 3-star Connor Booth has received a lot of hype. And the biggest thing with Nebraska's running back room, it's inexperience on paper outside of Johnson, but the staff has been very vocal about not going to the portal, which I think is just kind of an unwritten vote of confidence for the players they have in the building. Nebraska could get a running back if they wanted to in the portal. They've done it plenty of times in the past, and they chose not to. So I think that is a pretty big endorsement for what they have in the room, and we've already seen it with Johnson. Wide receiver, they lose Jamal Banks and Isaiah Nair, 2 good players for them last year. Again, this unit was outside the top 50 in total receiving efficiency. They go out, they add Dane Key from Kentucky. They add Neziah Hunter from Cal. Key is 6'3", 210, caught 47 balls for 715 yards last year. Perimeter receiver, played out there 78% of the time. 2.47 yards per route is very, very good. He's a former 4-star. He started with Kentucky 3 straight seasons. That offense hasn't always been explosive, so his career numbers, 1,865 yards and 14 touchdowns, are pretty solid. I'm expecting Key to be the wide receiver 1, but I don't know that for sure because Hunter in his own right is a good recruit, 4-star. He's now a sophomore. He's 6'2", 210. As a freshman, he immediately caught 40 balls for 578 yards, also playing out wide 88% of the time. 1.89 yards per route is very good for a freshman. So you have those two players right up top. I expect them to be the one and the two. And then there's a lot of options. Former four stars Ja'Cory Barney Jr. and Janiran Bonner are on the team. Barney's a slot receiver, 170 pounds. He was third on the team in receiving with 55 catches, 447 yards. Also rushed the ball 10 times. But they do these spring races at Nebraska. He won them, so he was crowned the fastest player on the team. He gives you something that's a little different than Key and Hunter. So I think he's the best fit for the three. They also have Bonner, who 6'2", 200 pounds, pretty inefficient last year. They've been talking about maybe a position change with him. He's sort of a jack of all trades, master of none, but he is a former four-star, so growth would not be super surprising. And then they bring in 3 four-star freshmen, Cortez Mills, Isaiah Mosey, Jeremiah Jones. Mills and Mosey have been there in the spring. They both actually got a lot of praise and could jump into this rotation. Jeremiah Jones gets there this summer. A couple other names that are probably just deeper rotational guys, Demetrius Bell, Quinn Clark, Keelan Smith, all still on the team. At tight end, Thomas Fidoni's gone. He leaves for the NFL, which leaves sort of an unconventional tight end room. Luke Lindenmeyer is the most experienced, former zero-star recruit, but he's 6'3", 250, only 5 catches last year. However, posted some of the best blocking numbers among tight ends in the Big Ten. So even though he's not the biggest, 250 is still good size. I think he'll be used quite a bit as a 6th offensive lineman, if you will, playing the tight end position where he can dominate in the run game, especially as a blocker. They also get back 82 snaps from sophomore 4-star Carter Nelson. He's the opposite, more of a hybrid tight end wide receiver at 230 pounds. He's 6'5", immediately caught 10 passes last year as a freshman. And then perhaps biggest question of all, what do they get out of Heinrich Haarberg? Former QB, now moving over to tight end. He's been extremely talented as a rusher. Think of you get the ball in this guy's hands and he can do some creative things. He has good size. So what does Haarberg give you in the first year under the transition of positions? We're not sure, but while unconventional, this is a talented unit. Offensive line, pretty good last year. They returned 3 starters from a group that was in the top 50, and they had a lot of injuries as well. So first off, left tackle Gunnar Gutula is back, played 516 snaps last year. He did not start the whole year, took over starting duties in week 5, and actually proved an upgrade to the offense. He's better in pass protection, only 16 pressures allowed, but pretty good as a run blocker too. This is a good place to start. From there, I'm going to go to the 2 guard positions, just trying to go, left to right, but there's at least a question who's going to play left guard because the 2 primary guards they have on the team have both played on the right side. So we'll start with Henry Lutovsky, who started last year full-time, allowed just 9 pressures and no sacks, good run blocker. He actually was the top offensive lineman on the entire team. So does he remain at left guard or do they move him to right? I'm not sure. He should start, though. He's an elite player. The other guard they added is former 4-star Notre Dame transfer Rocco Spindler. He started the last 2 years for the Irish, only 10 pressures allowed last year, no sacks. He just also played a lot of right guard. So I don't know who it's going to be at right, who it's going to be at left, but these should be your 2 guards. I would be surprised to see anything else. They actually have a 3rd guard as well, Justin Evans, but he is moving to center. Last year, he was a full-time guard, and he played for a little bit at 23 as well. He has over 1,100 snaps, nearly 1,200, only allowed 10 pressures last year, good run blocker. So this interior is also pretty set. The biggest question on the team is who plays right tackle. They bring in Elijah Pritchett from Alabama. He did not develop into the tackle Alabama wanted, allowed 30 pressures, below average as a run blocker as well, but he's experienced. They also have 4-star redshirt freshman Grant Bricks, played under 10 snaps last year, but got some development. And Teddy Prohaska is still on the roster as well. He suffered an injury before the season, and that's been a huge problem with him throughout his career, just staying healthy. When he's played, he's been good. Played a lot of left tackle, maybe could play right. Not sure where the best spot is for him, even if it's a swing tackle. But this offensive line, I think, is going to be improved this year. Just with who they brought in, what they returned, and now having an additional depth pieces with health, it's a good unit. They also have 4-star freshman Juju Marks. A couple other players have played some too. Preston Taumau is still on the team. 3 stars. Jason Machacek is back. He played a little bit. Sam Sledge is back. They've played a little bit. So very experienced unit with some talent. Defense is where I have a few more questions, especially off the edge. This was their best unit last year, but they lost MJ Sherman, Jamari Butler, and Princewell Uman-Milan. That leaves just Cameron Lenhart as the most experienced player. You can play him inside and out, but he was largely an average player. Only had 7 pressures on his snaps. So we'll see if they can find someone else to potentially play more of a ceiling role for this team. I think the portal additions could do that. Deshaun McCullough from Oklahoma. Williams Noweri comes in from Missouri. McCullough played 447 snaps as a freshman with Indiana, where he was a 4-star. Then he transferred to Oklahoma, where injuries have really limited him. He hasn't even reached that number of snaps in the last 2 years combined. But last year, for example, stress fracture held him out to week 7. So McCullough has a lot of talent. See if he can push Lenhard. Nwaneri, also 5-star recruit with Missouri, played only 38 snaps. You just don't get a lot of 5-stars in the edge. So Nwaneri, I think, is probably going to end up playing a big role for this team. They're deep, though. They got back 144 snaps from sophomore Willis McGahee. He had 9 pressures on those snaps. Also added Jalen George from East Tennessee State, who was a baller in the FCS. But it's just a tough transition up to the Big Ten. The inside, I think, has a few more questions than edge, and the D-line has some of the most questions on the team. They lost Ty Robinson and Nush Hutmacher. Rotational snaps back from Elijah Judy, 171. Keona Davis, 108. Riley Van Poppel, 65. Luckily, Judy and Van Poppel are former 4-stars, but on the snaps these players received last year, none of them were all that good. Now, we're talking a lot of young players, not full-time players, so development year over year should be expected for this group. They also bring in Gabe Moore from Mississippi State. He's a redshirt freshman now, did not play last year. And this is a position they've been recruiting very well. They bring in 4-star freshmen Malcolm Simpson, Cade Pierzak, and Tyson Terry. Only problem is Terry tore his ACL this spring. But still, you lose a lot from this group, but the talent is very clear, and maybe the talent is even upgraded from last year. A lot of it just young and unproven. It might take a little while to gel, but I think there's a lot of optimism with the defensive line, even though they're losing a ton of production. Linebacker. They lost John Bullock and Mekhi Gabayer. That leaves Javin Wright as the most experienced backer, followed by Vincent Shavers Jr. Wright is a crazy player. He's played over 500 snaps the last 2 years, but he took a little bit of a step back last year. He's been so hurt through his career. He's actually a 7th-year player. But last year, he made 1 start. Shavers, 202 snaps. Decent production. I mean, limited sample, but he had 25 tackles. So this is a decent place to start. I'm not sure if either of these guys will start and play the whole season or if they will decide to rotate in some other players. The youth is very strong for this team. But first, they did add a veteran transfer in Marcus Watson-Trent from Georgia Southern. He's a 3-year starter, so this will be his 4th. Back-to-back elite seasons. Last year, he had 120 tackles, 8 tackles for loss, and he was good in coverage. So that's a veteran to fall back on to hopefully lead your room. But they have a ton of elite players, young players of 4-star caliber. Dylan Rogers, Roger Gradney are back. Rogers only got 6 snaps, and Gradney had an ACL tear, so he missed all of last year. And they also bring in 4-star freshman Dawson Merritt Christian Jones. Merritt's an Alabama commit who flipped over to Nebraska. So the true ceiling is probably among your youth, just because we haven't seen that much out of Javin Wright and Vincent Shavers. Watson-Trent is transferring up from the Sun Belt, so you never know how that's going to go. But there's a lot of names. So there's at least 7 players I think you could put on the field with some confidence. And if you let those guys compete and get the top of the play from those guys, it should be a good unit. Defensive back, this was the worst unit for the team last year, which is a little bit surprising. They do return all 3 of their corners. I think you're going to see some movement among this group. One thing we know for sure, on the boundary, former 4-star Sierra Wright should play and start. Originally with USC, is 2 years of starting experience now. 1 with the Trojans, 1 with the Cornhuskers. Great season last year, 6 PBUs, 2 INTs, 55% completion. Great place to start. In the slot, they returned Malcolm Hartzog. He has started the better part of 3 years as well. Took a little bit of a step back last year. 66% completion, 508 yards and 5 TDs is not great, but he did have 3 PBUs and 4 INTs. I think those positions are pretty much set. The final boundary corner, Marcus Buford Jr., He's also played a little bit in the slot. He's been working at safety this spring. So I don't know if you're going to use him at safety or in the slot. Basically, I think you have 4 positions that are kind of figured out for Nebraska in the secondary and one that's uncertain, and a lot of it will depend on where they slot in Buford. But anyway, he started in 2022. He spent a lot of 23 injured, came back and started again last year. Pretty good everywhere. 3 PBUs, 1 INT. Definitely a bigger liability than Wright on the perimeter, so maybe that's why you see a position change. But those 3 are back and they have starting experience, whether Buford plays at safety or corner, Hartzog in the slot, Wright on the boundary. If they do move Buford to the slot, they're going to need another corner. They have Andrew Marshall coming in from Idaho, 83rd percentile production in the FCS, very good player, just a tough transition. Redshirt freshman Amari Sanders has played a little bit. The oft-injured Bly Hill is back. He's originally a St. Francis transfer. So there are options. A couple other unlikely candidates. Jameer Khan from Southern Illinois is transferred in, but he's been hurt all spring. And they have a 4-star freshman in Bryce Weber. So I think the corner position is going to be in good hands regardless. At safety, we already mentioned Buford might move there. The other safety will be Deshaun Singleton. This we know. Former starter, a returning starter, I should say. Second on the team with tackles last year at 71. Good coverage numbers, 71% completion percentage, but only 180 yards, 1 PBU, 1 interception. Singleton's going to man one of those positions. And then if they don't move Buford over to safety, they added Justin Rhett from Georgia, who's a former 4-star. Not a lot of snaps to his name, but a good transfer that can play safety. They have 4-star sophomore Mario Buford, the brother of Marcus Buford. Ramir Stewart's still there. So there's a lot to be figured out, but I think you have 4 pretty solid starters in this unit, and the last starter will just depend on where they decide to play Marcus Buford. Kicker, they returned Tristan Alvano. He got hurt last year, only played in 3 games. But he's been perfect on extra points, only missed 1 field goal. And throughout his career, his field goals have been a little shakier. He's 12 of 19. He has 5 misses beyond 50 yards and then only 1 inside 40. So it's mainly just the long-range field goals that have been a problem for him. They also bring back John Hull, who filled in for Alvano when he was injured. This special teams unit should be better. Somehow they were 97th last year. Obviously, a kicker injury in week 3 does not help that. But I would be shocked if they're 97th again. This is definitely something they need to clean up. When you play close games and you lose by single digits to Illinois, to Ohio State, UCLA, USC, Iowa, every play you have matters, especially on special teams when you're 97th. So expecting improvement, which honestly could have led to additional wins last year. Let's look at the schedule to close this out. Don't think there's anything else to add on the roster. Overall, it's a very good roster. Some of it's quite young. But again, development has been very strong under Matt Rule, and this team has quite a bit of talent. Their recruiting has been shockingly good. But schedule-wise, who does Nebraska have to play? Non-con features Cincinnati, Akron, and Houston Christian. That should be a 3-0 start. The hardest game is against Cincinnati, of course. And that game is on a Thursday. They play it at Arrowhead, so it's a weird neutral. In conference, they face Michigan and Penn State. They dodge Ohio State and Oregon. So they have 2 of the 4 teams up at the top, but I think they're 2 of the teams you'd rather play, especially the Michigan team. And they get the Michigan game at home at the very least. From there, among the middle class, they have to travel to Minnesota and UCLA. They face USC and Iowa, but both of those are at home, which is solid for them. And then they have a couple games from the bottom feeders against Michigan State, Maryland, and Northwestern. They're going to be sizable favorites in 6 of these games. They're going to be decent favorites in a number of others. And I think they'll be underdogs to Michigan and Penn State. The Michigan game is going to be very weird because it's in week 4. I'm curious to see where that spread comes in. I think it's going to be close to a pick'em. Perhaps a small underdog, maybe even a small favorite, depending on how the first 3 weeks go. Michigan is a tough game in non-con, but this is closer than some people might believe just based on where Michigan's been historically and where Nebraska's rising to. Penn State, that one's away. It's at the end of the year. Unless something catastrophic happens, Nebraska's going to be an underdog. So really, I think the schedule comes down to how do they compare to the rest of the middle class? How do they shake out against USC and Iowa especially? They have a chance to be favored in both of those games. And how those games play out is going to be huge in deciding whether Nebraska is a 7-5 team or if they make a further step to 9-3. 10-2. And they have the chance to do that. This team is good enough with Raiola's second year under the 5-star, fixing up the coaching staff on offense, and bringing in a lot of just young players from the last 2 recruiting classes. How do they develop and how can they help Raiola improve the defense under a new DC? That'll do it for today. Let me know if you have any questions, comments, or want to see someone next. We're taking requests. Next up will be Louisville. Until next time, good luck, everyone. We will catch you later.